welcome to the Itinerary. Today's episode was a welcome last-minute switcheroo for our team, thanks to our Prime Minister's announcement in April. The instant we heard those words everyone's been waiting for, we knew we needed to pull together an episode dedicated to our new bubble with Australia. So out came the little black books to bring in some great minds from our industry to chat about the hottest topic of the year. Joining me today is Chris Roberts, Chief Executive, Tourism Industry Aotearoa.
Kia ora.
Nicola Waldren, General Manager, Restaurant Association.
Kia ora.
And Nadine, Accommodation Group Manager, YMCA. Kia ora, g'day, lovely to see you all. So, the long-awaited bubble with Australia. What do we know about this and its impact on our tourism and hospitality industry so far? Is it the saviour for our tourism, or is there anything or things that we still need to be particularly cautious about?
Well, I think if you look at the numbers of arrivals that came in as soon as the bubble was announced, the strongest days were the first 2 days. So people were wanting to get across the Tasman. About 5,000 people came into New Zealand on each of those first 2 days. And people going the other way was less, which is a good thing from our point of view, that we've got more Australians crossing the ditch and coming this way than New Zealanders heading the other way. The numbers tailed off a bit after that, and we'll all be watching those numbers very closely. But we've settled into about 3,000 arrivals a day coming in from Australia.
Yeah, for our members, I think it's not a saviour, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, isn't it? At this early stage, many of our sort of restaurant and cafe business owners haven't noted a marked upswing in tourists as a result of the travel bubble, but it certainly has raised optimism levels, and you know that they'd taken a bit of a hit at the start of the year, and definitely members in some of the winter hot spots like Queenstown, Southern Lakes are expecting a strong winter. So we're definitely hopeful to see more and more Australians arriving.
Yeah, same for us. We definitely have seen a pickup in bookings from July, August onwards, just due to the school holidays, and also December and January, which is a really good indication. And yeah, in the interim, the weekends are getting more busy, families are reuniting, obviously, and yeah, we can't wait. And I guess it gives us a bit of time as well, just to refreshen up on our COVID guidelines, and that we have everything in place just in case something were to happen.
Are we prepared? Were we prepared for the reopening of those borders with our Australian bubble? Or is there a bit of concern about staff and workforce shortages?
We've actually just surveyed our members, and the survey went out actually on the day that the bubble was announced and closed just after it got underway. So members really gave us a snapshot of what they were thinking this would mean. And 2/3 of those who responded to the survey were worried about having enough staff. And a good quarter of them thought they would not find all the staff they needed as travellers start coming back in from Australia. So a very clear message coming through that despite all the jobs that were lost in our industry in 2020, now it's turned around to a point where we could be facing some severe staff shortages. And that's right across the country and right across all sorts of jobs.
Yeah, I mean, we have some really significant concerns about the industry's staff shortages. The staffing challenges really are at critical levels. And like, Chris said, we survey our members regularly. We do a monthly kind of snapshot of the industry, and the staffing challenges is really that most common pain point that is being highlighted by our members. So, a lot of our advocacy work is in that area. We're looking at solutions for this challenge, but many of them are really longer term fixes, and we need help to get through the now, really. Business owners are trying so hard to be successful, but the reality is you can't do it without a team. So, in some extreme cases, businesses are needing to reduce their opening hours because of the lack of staff. We've had some members that have had to close temporarily. So it is definitely a real concern.
Nadine, what impact does the bubble have on the backpacker or the working holiday market? Do you think Australians will come here to New Zealand to experience their OE?
Yes, I'm confident they will. I mean, they've been cooped up for the last 14 months in Australia, so I'm quite confident they will. And we obviously rely on those 44,000 working holiday visitors in Australia currently, and Immigration New Zealand has now opened up applications for them to come to New Zealand, which would obviously be perfect timing for us if they are able to be here by June, July, especially in the Queenstown area where there's going to be a significant amount of staff going to be required. So we're heavily relying on that. And yeah, we're quite confident we're going to be coming back stronger than what we used to be.
Sure. Nadine, you mentioned there about Queenstown, and we know ski season is upon us, June, July. So do you think that Australians coming in will take up some of those roles in terms of those shortages that we've talked about? And how do we as a group feel about that notion?
Hopefully they will, but we have to keep in mind Australians still get quite good wages as well. So to convince them to come to New Zealand and take up jobs here might be a bit challenging, but that's why I think, really have to rely on the international youth that is currently in Australia, that they are going to be willing to come to New Zealand and, spend a year here and support our workforce.
One good thing for Queenstown and some of these other ski resort areas is that over the last year, the cost of accommodation has come down, the rentals have come down, and that was a major barrier to New Zealanders going to places like Queenstown to take up jobs. So if we've got young New Zealanders out there that fancy the idea of working through the ski season, there will be jobs there. Turn up in Queenstown and Wanaka and elsewhere, and you'll be grabbed. There'll be jobs around, and hopefully there are more places available to stay, and the rentals are a bit cheaper than they had got to a year or so ago. It still can be challenging. I certainly acknowledge that, but there will be jobs out there if you fancy spending some time skiing on your days off, and working in the bars at night or in the hotels or whatever it might be. There's going to be plenty of jobs.
Is there a bit of a fear we will lose domestic tourism or domestic tourists with this new Australian bubble opening up?
It seems inevitable, I guess, that will happen as confidence about international travel grows. I think at this stage there is still a certain amount of caution about travel. So many of the tourists arriving or travelling between the two countries are people reconnecting with whānau and friends rather than holiday travellers or business travel. But I guess, as the vaccination rolls out and confidence sort of grows, then yes, I guess there will be more travel between the two countries.
With the Cook Islands opening up as well, we are obviously going to see a number of New Zealanders heading for some winter sun, going to the Cook Islands, a favourite destination for many Kiwis. And there's not a big population in the Cooks to bring the other way. So we are going to have a net loss there. So there will be parts of New Zealand that may actually be worse off from a tourism point of view with the borders starting to open, because they have enjoyed having those domestic visitors around, and now New Zealanders are getting more choice, and some Kiwis will be choosing to head off overseas. So, there are winners and losers in this whole situation, but we do know for the long-term benefit of the tourism and hospitality sectors, we do need to safely reopen our borders. That's in everyone's long-term interest.
So what happens if the bubble pops?
Obviously a lot of work has gone into getting the Trans-Tasman travel underway. The government have highlighted that it may need to pause from time to time, but we'd be hopeful it's not about to pop. But that there is definitely uncertainty amongst operators about continuing to move between alert levels. That's a big concern. So they are concerned that they may need to close again temporarily due to an outbreak, and that may be something that is brought in from offshore, although hopefully not. So that is one of the major stresses, I think, for our members, is that ongoing sense of uncertainty. So that's where we sort of think that a review of the alert level settings really needs to be undertaken, so that there is, that they can maybe offer some more assurance if we do move between alert levels. For instance, that support kicks in automatically, things like the wage subsidy or a hardship grant, so that business owners kind of can have that certainty in place. If something terrible like an alert level change happened, they still sort of know what the playing field is.
And we also need to give as much certainty as we can to the traveller. So we've very early on in the Tasman opening, there's been a couple of cases in Australia, and so we've had some planes delayed early on, flights not happening, and then the outbreak is contained quickly and things go back to normal. So we're testing the system, but it'll continue to be tested. We're going to have these challenges coming up, hopefully not too often, but they are going to come up. And if they're not managed well on both sides of the Tasman, that will dent the confidence of the visitor to travel. So we've all got to work together on this to make sure that we're giving the visitor, the traveller, as much confidence as possible, and we're giving our businesses as much certainty as possible. It's obviously in everyone's interest to make this work, and we've all got to be part of that solution.
Yeah, and also with the work and holiday visa holders, they're quite flexible with timings. Even if there was to be like a 72-hour lockdown, they probably have long-term plans to be in New Zealand or Australia anyway. So to them, it's probably doesn't have so much impact on them, but it's more on the people that are just going over for a short trip and they have to come back to return to work, for example. So for them, it's very important that we're just keeping informed and everything what Chris and Nicola already said just now.
How does our bubble with Australia prepare us for the future?
Well, it gets us used to having people back in the country, which is a good start. And I know there's been some amazing scenes in the early days of Australian visitors, people coming up to them in the street and saying, "Welcome back, great to see you," which we want to hear more of those sort of stories, more of that happening. But at some point, we're going to have visitors coming back in from a range of different countries. And we're going to have to adapt ourselves again, get used to that environment. Obviously, some Kiwis have got used to having the place to themselves, and it's not in the long-term interest of New Zealand to stay isolated. We do need to open up to the world. Provide so many jobs, so much economic activity, so much benefit to New Zealand to be connected to the world. But the degree of uncertainty that still exists does make it really, really hard to know quite what the road ahead is going to be. Could we be back to almost normal by the end of this year? That might be the most optimistic outlook. Could we still be somewhere on a road to recovery in 5 years' time? That's a possibility. So we really are going to have to be very adaptable and agile going forward, because we just don't quite know yet what lies ahead of us.
Yeah, it's obviously a great step in the right direction with Australia to build a really strong foundation, and other countries will follow. Singapore is already in the talks, the Pacific Islands as well. So I think it sets definitely a really good example to the rest of the world as well, and hopefully it'll be a big advantage for us, and hopefully we get all the vaccinations in order as well, so that New Zealand and Australia potentially aren't the ones behind with the vaccinations to the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an Australian travel bubble, and there's going to be more bubbles. So, this is a good start to, prepare us for the future. We don't think that in the hospitality industry, it's not going to be the same hospitality industry in the future. So that's a real focus for us, is like focusing on the future and looking at what we need to change and, how we're going to achieve some of that change. For us, non-biased as I am, hospitality and tourism, it's the lifeblood of our country's economy. So it's our mission to look at how our industry can come out of this stronger and more resilient, and how we can attract more workers so that we're not talking about these skill shortages in the future, and how we train and educate them and how we retain them. That's what we're kind of got to be looking at now.
What is the attraction, or what would you like to share with our audience in terms of entering or re-entering the hospitality and travel and tourism industry?
Look, I guess some of those who were in the industry last year when the pandemic hit and then lost their jobs, even if they were the temporary jobs, part-time jobs, may be feeling a little burnt by that experience. But this crisis is not like a normal crisis that befalls an industry. It is temporary. It will come to an end, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with the New Zealand tourism product and our hospitality, our manaakitanga here. So the world will want to come back. There will be jobs, there will be opportunities, there will be business opportunities in the future, and hopefully in the not too distant future. So my view is that this is the best time there's ever been to get involved in tourism and hospitality. We've hit a low point, obviously, last year, but the only way is up from here. And in the long term, it's going to be a fantastic industry to be involved with.
I completely agree. Over this pandemic, internationally, Brand New Zealand has, held up incredibly well. There are a huge number of opportunities, exciting opportunities available. And so, now more than ever, it's a great time to sort of join the industry or rejoin the industry. We've learned a lot, I think, over the past 12 plus months. And, as I've sort of already said, it's made our industries stronger and, hopefully more resilient, and take those opportunities that are available right now.
That's right. I think it's definitely brought the industry, which is already quite tight-knit, but even more closer together. We wouldn't never have thought what we're able to achieve if someone would have told us 2 years ago what was going to happen. The teams individually are a lot stronger. Companies are more diversified, reaching out to different business streams just to get by for the moment. But it's actually quite amazing and inspirational to see what people are able to do, and the initiative and the work effort they're putting into. And New Zealand, everyone's in envy overseas of New Zealand, and I think as soon as we're able to accept people from overseas, we're going to be very busy.
We'll now wrap up the show with a short clip created by Auckland Unlimited, the day that we first welcomed our Australian friends and whānau back into our country. But I warn you, you may need your tissues.